Excellencies, participants, ladies and gentlemen, a very good afternoon from London at the IMO. We are joined today by so many participants from around the world, and I notice in the chat we're receiving greetings from all over the world. Welcome everyone to the very first celebration of International Day for Women in Maritime. And this symposium marks the first event by IMO for this celebration under the theme Training, Visibility, Recognition, Supporting a Barrier-Free Working Environment for Women in Maritime. The structure of the symposium is that the Secretary General will welcome you with his opening remarks, which will be followed by speakers on 3 panels who will be discussing training, visibility, and recognition in support of a barrier-free working environment for women in maritime. We have a few administrative announcements. The intention after each panel discussion will be for questions which can be posted in the chat function or on our social media platform, and we will be monitoring both of those platforms. If there's not enough time following each segment, we will go to the questions that we receive at the end of the session, time permitting. During the symposium, we'd kindly like to request you to keep your microphones muted and your cameras off during the presentations. However, we encourage you to put your cameras on during the more interactive parts of the symposium, such as the Q&A, and we would urge you only to activate your microphone when you're invited to speak. So to begin and to start off this symposium, I'd like to welcome the Secretary General and invite him to take the floor to open the symposium. Secretary General, you have the floor.
Thank you, Moderator Azara. Excellencies, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon, good evening, good morning. I'm very pleased to be speaking to you on the first International Day for Women in Maritime. This is a historic day that has been chosen by IMO member states to honor the achievements of the many women who contribute so much to the success of our maritime journey together. But while there is much to celebrate, there is also the need for more progress to be made. I'm pleased to launch today the report from the IMO Vista Global Survey on Women in Maritime. Despite the challenges of the COVID pandemic, we were able to gather meaningful data. This data from the survey exposes the gender gap in our sector. Women account for just 20% of the workforce in the Maritime Authority of a member state and 29% of the workforce across the subsectors in the maritime industry. Although these numbers are significantly higher than those at the sea, where women make up as little as 2% of the workforce. We can and must do better. IMO is committed to gender inclusivity. As enshrined in the UN Sustainable Development Goals, the benefits of having women in our workforce are obvious. We need creative thinking to navigate maritime toward a more sustainable, more diverse, and more inclusive green future. We need the brightest minds to address the challenges of decarbonization, digitalization, and more. People must be empowered to participate in the discussions about the maritime's future, irrespective of gender. Collaboration is the best pathway to find optimal solutions, and I'm pleased that there are many more women in our sector than in the past, as well as an increasing number of diversity, champions, and allies. IMO has been working for over 3 decades to address the gender imbalance in our working environment through our Women in Maritime program. We have committed to this important cause, and we are seeing these efforts bear fruit. Across the world, IMO has facilitated the creation of professional networks to mentor and support training and other opportunities. 8 thriving women in Maritime Association WIMAS have been established, 3 in Africa and 1 each representing Arab states, Asia and the Caribbean, Latin America, and the Pacific. Women can gain technical expertise via IMO funded opportunity at the IMNI, our Women in Port Management course, and most recently, the Maritime CEO Leadership Accelerator program, which has launched in March this year. Many IMO meetings are chaired by technically skilled and capable women, including 3 of the 5 committees, something that was unlikely 25 years ago. Every year, we welcome more female delegates from member states, NGOs, and IGOs. And IMO delegates have created the IMO Gen network to advance gender equality. We must build on this progress. The International Day of Women in Maritime now provides an annual opportunity to take stock and identify areas where improvement is needed, both on a sector-wide scale and within our individual organizations. I'm confident that maritime stakeholders can and will do their best to make our sector more welcoming to and supportive for women. I'm pleased to see all of you at our symposium today, both as speakers and attendees. I look forward to your discussion on the best ways to create supportive and rewarding workplaces for women in maritime, whether on board or on shore. For this inaugural International Women in Maritime Day, IMO would like to celebrate the many faces of women in maritime shared across the social media using the hashtag Women in Maritime Day. I look forward to celebrating today, every year, this day every year, as we make progress toward a more inclusive future. Thank you and enjoy the symposium. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Secretary General. And with those words of encouragement from our Secretary General, distinguished participants, I'm pleased to commence the symposium. As you are no doubt aware, IMO is strongly committed to supporting its member states to achieve the UN 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, in particular SDG 5, which aims to empower women and girls. And it's important to highlight, as the Secretary General indicated, the importance of IMO's Women in Maritime program, which is currently in its 33rd year, providing women from developing countries with access to high-level technical training and strategic support. And also our WIMAs, and I know that we have a lot of our representatives of the Women in Maritime Associations from across the globe that are participating in this event today and are online. And it's a pleasure to see so many of you. I also wish to highlight our partnerships that have been very important in supporting the work that the organization has been doing in this regard, including our work with WISTA, which, as the Secretary General highlighted, is very fitting that today the results of the study by IMO and WISTA to develop, to obtain the baseline data on the number of women working in the maritime sector has been published today. And you're all welcome to make yourselves familiar with the document. I think it's also important at this time to highlight the continued outstanding contribution of IMO's training institutions, the World Maritime University and the International Maritime Law Institute, based in Sweden and in Malta, respectively. And there are also many graduates online with us today, and it's important to recognize all those delegates from around the world that are joining us. Internally, also within the IMO Secretariat, considerable work is underway towards supporting gender equality and creating a barrier-free working environment in keeping with our commitments that we've made within the United Nations system and also to our member states. We've developed an internal strategy establishing a framework supporting our work towards gender equality and advancement. I'd also like to help us remember the work that was undertaken during the 2019 when we took upon ourselves the theme of empowering women in the maritime community. And this theme served as a catalyst for many important activities for promoting women in our industry and led to the adoption of an assembly resolution preserving the legacy of the year. And with its operative paragraphs in the resolution, introducing an inventory of actions that could be undertaken by the Secretariat, member states, and delegates in support of the endeavor. And I'd also like to acknowledge the submission by the PAC-WIMA, which is the Pacific Women in Maritime Association, to the Technical Cooperation Committee that led to the adoption of the IMO Assembly Resolution in 2021 of this important day that we are celebrating today. And I'm happy to get our symposium underway so that you can hear from other people besides myself. And our first panel is the panel that will be addressing the question, what type of training supports a barrier-free working environment for women in maritime? And first speaker on the panel is Christine Cabo-Woro. And I'd like to introduce Christine first, and then I'll introduce the other members of the panel. And the structure of the symposium will be that each of the speakers will in turn share their thoughts on the topics that in their area that they've been assigned under the panel, and then we'll open up for questions. So if that's agreeable with everyone, I'll just tell you a little bit about Christine, and then Dinah, and then Michaela. So Christine started her career in maritime transport in 1987 when she joined CMA CGM, which is currently the third largest shipping line and major logistics operator. She went from line manager to a member of the executive committee, and her career in CMA CGM led her to the management of several group lines in Asia, the Mediterranean, and Asia Middle East. In 2011, she left the CMA CGM group to start a consulting business, and she was subsequently appointed by ministerial decree as Chief Executive Officer of the Port of Dunkirk. 2 years later, she was appointed as the head of the first French port in Marseille, Force, and in March 2019, she rejoined CMA CGM Group next to Rudolf Sad as Executive Vice President, Assets Group and Operations. She's currently in charge of vessels, fleet, terminals, and energy departments, as well as operations within the group. And this is a very impressive CV, and I believe that you will hear a lot of interesting insight from Christine. And if Christine is online, if you could please switch your camera on and give a little wave to the audience, it would be greatly appreciated.
Can you unmute me and
No,
put the camera in motion?
We can hear you, but we can't see you at the moment.
Coming, I hope.
Yes, soon.
I think
Okay.
I'm blocked by the host.
There you go. Yeah. We can see you. So if you give a little wave, I'll introduce Dinah as well, and then Michaela before, so that then we can get this panel started. Okay, so we have Dinah, who has 16 years of experience in the maritime and transport sector in Papua New Guinea. And she graduated with a bachelor's degree of technology in communication for development at the Papua New Guinea University of Technology. Her career commenced as a community development officer under the transport project to rehabilitate maritime aid to navigation. And subsequently, she transitioned to Papua New Guinea's Maritime Administration, then moved on to manage and provide oversight to community engagement programs, as well as work with the Department of Transport as assistant manager in charge of aviation, maritime safety, and maritime security under an executive leadership program for women in transport. She currently manages the Maritime Standards and Compliance Department of the National Maritime Safety Authority of Papua New Guinea. And she's the chairperson for the Pacific Women in Maritime Association, PACWIMA. And this is relevant because of what I told you regarding what kickstarted the whole idea of an International Day for Women in Maritime. So she's very passionate about seeing pathways being identified and established in order for young girls and women to prosper in the maritime sector. So we welcome Dinah. And if you are online, if you could kindly switch on your camera and give a little wave so that everyone knows. Next, I'd like to introduce, hello, welcome. I'd like to introduce Dr. Michaela Muscat-Spack, who is a member of Malta's representation to the IMO. In 2019, she spearheaded the resolution aimed at preserving the legacy of the World Maritime Theme for 2019 and achieving a barrier-free working environment for women in the maritime sector. She's currently a coordinator of the IMOGEN, which is IMO Gender Network, and it's a network of maritime delegates at the IMO, diplomats at the IMO, and she's advocating for gender equality. She also serves as the special advisor to the European Union's first Commissioner for Equality. And she was a Commonwealth doctoral scholar at LSE, where she is also an associate of the foreign policy think tank LSE Ideas. Michaela, if you could give a wave. So that is our first panel. And I would like to invite you one after the other to share your thoughts on the type of training that supports a barrier-free working environment for women. I'll start with Christine. Christine, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to say that I'm extremely honored to be participating to this panel on the inaugural inauguration of International Day for Women in Maritime. It's a great initiative, and thank you for that, and thank you for inviting me. So before we talk more specifically about training for women in maritime, I would like first, if you allow me, to say a couple of words for the seafarers as a whole, whether men or women, because in the past 2 years, because of the COVID situation, our seafarers across the globe have been going through extremely difficult conditions of work, conditions of life. It's been a huge tense situation for them at any level of the organization. And I would like to use this day to pay a special tribute to the seafarers of the world for the past 2 years that we had they had to go through. Let them be thanked for the professionalism and the implication that they have shown during these past 2 years. This being said, talking about women. So in CMA-CGM today, we are trying to promote as much as we can the women in maritime position. I am myself in charge of assets and operations, and being a woman, I certainly would like to see more women being successful and being attracted by this career. A couple of some figures, as said Mr. Secretary General. In CMA-CGM, indeed, we have seafarers, women seafarers in our crews. They represent today only 2% of the total crews, but I have to say that over the past 5 years, all the numbers, whether in training, whether in position, have been doubled. So we see an acceleration of the trend of women being attracted to shipping. But we need to do what we can to accelerate that. First of all, about training, there is a lot to be done about, first of all, the knowledge of the maritime world. Maritime world over the past 50 years has been very much of a man's world, and if we want to attract women, we need to speak up to them and to give them some view, to give them more information on what is happening in the maritime world and what wonderful careers there are for them in this profession. Attractivity, of course, is about the right type of training. How do we engage into a bigger training facility? It's also about acceptability of certain conditions, on how we can help them to make compatible their personal life with their professional life. It's across the board difficult for women in any profession to make a compatibility between our professional life and our personal life. It is even more difficult in the maritime sector, and there is something on which we need to work for them in terms of attractivity. There is also maybe some we need to brainstorm together. What can we do to make sure that the conditions of being at sea for a woman can mean for them, and what we can do to adapt these conditions at sea better, again, to with crew changes, with the time at sea, with the compatibility with the family life. What can we do so that the situation for women may become a little bit easier? There is also a big subject about the acceptability of their male colleagues, of the fact that women at sea can be as efficient, not to say more efficient than their male colleagues in certain instances. And what I'm always extremely admiring about that is the fact that when we talk safety awareness, when we talk efficiency with respect to the sustainability, and we know that the decarbonization and the sustainability of the maritime sector is on the front line. On all these subjects, women are extremely determined. They are extremely creative. They have a lot of good ideas for that. And the promotion of women in this type of topics, which are now becoming major topics in our maritime world, they can accelerate this awareness about safety, about sustainability, which we are all so much in need of. And I think we also need to focus on the fact that at sea, like on the shore, like in any profession, a combination of mixity between men and women creates richer conditions of sharing best practice, better conditions of enhancing efficiency. Simply because both a man and a woman bring together more added value, and again a better knowledge of what we can do to progress and accelerate. So training is a very strong focus. We are extremely dedicated to that at CMA CGM to again attract more women into the maritime world, but their daily life at sea, the way we can adapt certain conditions to the very specific needs of a woman life, and how do we create the conditions so that they feel comfortable and that they can focus on the long career at sea is also our duty as managers, and this is where we need to work. It's a continuous improvement path. And this is where at CMA CGM we are strongly committed towards. By the way, at CMA CGM, we today have two captains, two women captains in our fleet. We have 7 chief engineers, and these ladies, they are wonderful. They are extremely efficient, and we should also encourage them to speak up, to create exemplarity, explain to their colleagues and to their to other women or younger women why they have chosen this path, because examples are the best way to promote this attractivity, and to show that to give some dreams to the young girls, and to tell them that yes, it is possible, yes, you can do it. and we are all here to support you in achieving success.
Thank you very much, Christine. That was very, very encouraging. I think there's a lot of important takeaways from your intervention, and we will look at how we can make sure that conditions at sea, we continue to work on ensuring that conditions at sea can be enhanced for women to also entice more women to be attracted to a career in this area, and look at how we can look at how the complementarity between the sexes and how we can kind of work on our strengths or play to our strengths in the interest of the industry. I think those are very important key points. So I'll move to the next speaker. Diana, if you're ready and you'd like to take the floor, you have the
Thank you
floor.
very much. Thank you very much, Azara. Before I commence, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank everyone for the support in getting the International Day for Women in Maritime recognized as an IMO proclaimed day. We also are humbled by the invitation to participate in this forum as well. So thank you very much. In terms of what training creates a barrier-free environment, we consider all training to be important. Training in all forms, whether it's soft skills, professional or technical, are essential, as recipients obviously are more informed after receiving training, and when they're informed, they're more confident in participating in any conversations. We'd like to see more emphasis in terms of mentoring and succession planning. Having come through myself, as indicated by Zara, on being a recipient of a secondment training within this country, I recognize that job placements or training and secondments, training programs are essential in the sector, and that noting obviously that the work in the maritime sector is quite extensive and technical. We believe that by having mentorship or coaching programs as part of that training can be that opportunity for us to work with either male colleagues or female colleagues that have had experiences in the sector as well. So it kind of encourages young girls and young women especially to mirror the kind of the kind of leadership that's already shown in the sector as well. So for us, especially for the Pacific Women in Maritime, we're happy to and proud to state that we have a regional strategy for Pacific Women in Maritime 2020 to 2024, which provides a roadmap essentially for us in terms of what we need to do, in terms of training as well. Our focus is not different from what the Women in Maritime program states. It's more or less a reflection of that in training, visibility, and recognition. So under the regional strategy for women in maritime in the Pacific, the actions that we'd like to see coming out from this strategy would be an increased number of women in maritime through higher and continued learning institutions, building technical competencies of women in maritime through training and workshops, improve safety and better working conditions for women on board ships, and enhance support and learning environments or spaces for women in maritime to learn and support each other through mentorship and coaching. We believe that within the Pacific, we've had the opportunity since the reinvigoration of the Pacific Women in Maritime in 2016. We've had the opportunity to get so much support from the IMO and various development partners in going to gain a certification, a master's program, or having to attend a certificate training or workshops, or attend conferences and meetings as well, we can observe that we've had a higher number of women in the Pacific having some attendance to those various platforms or training opportunities. What we'd like to see is possibly the states and maritime administrations and key partners to talk about, as indicated, some kind of mentoring program. Because in the Pacific, obviously, we would like to learn off other experienced people in order for us to get more knowledge and build our knowledge in the space of the maritime sector and the industry as well. So in terms of our contribution here, I would like to see that more emphasis is in that space. We acknowledge some of the programs that are undertaken in the IMO, like the junior professional officers and senior professional officers program that we could probably emulate in the Pacific region as well. So thank you very much.
My apologies, my microphone was off. I wanted to thank you, Dinah, for the very insightful intervention. And you also echoed the importance of mentoring, as Christine, and coaching. And I think another very important key point is succession planning, for especially in terms of the maritime institutions, and how we can work on improving working conditions on board for those of our colleagues that opt to go into the seafaring profession. And also you emphasized and highlighted how the JPO and SPO could also be replicated within regions, and I guess across, to share our best practice with each other, which I think is also very important points that you highlighted. I'd like to give the floor now to Michaela.
Hi, good afternoon.
Hello, Michaela.
Hi, hello everyone. Thank you for giving me the floor, Zara, and thank you for inviting me here today. I've been following the interesting interventions by my colleagues, and I will be reflecting on some of the points that they raised today as well, namely the importance of mentoring and coaching, and also what was said about the importance of training for all, including men, to foster a more diverse environment. But first, I wanted to start by taking stock of where we are today, and also make note of the fact that many diversity studies have concluded that empathy, emotional intelligence, and a collaborative approach are some of the critical added values that women bring to the table. And in fact, I can't help but note that the key partners and speakers today, the majority, from our colleagues at PACWIMA, who spearheaded the resolution that led to the creation of this day, as well as other delegates and other speakers, are predominantly women. And I think testimony to the benefit of the collaborative approach that women bring to the table. I'd like to add that the same applies to Imogen. Although we welcome male allies and they have been critical to our work, our delegates are mainly predominantly female ambassadors, permanent representatives, and delegates. When it came to our first initiative, we asked ourselves, as women who have climbed up the ladder, how can we help the next generation of female leaders and support their professional progress? So it was for this reason that we launched our mentoring program, Women on Board, in 2021. The idea was to coach and mentor the next generation. So this was our contribution to training in the maritime sector. This was the first of its kind program, and it's based on values of intergenerational solidarity and transmission of these values. We matched 25 IMO delegates to 25 IMLI students. Our ambition was that IMLI female students should have access to professional role models, enabling them to share experiences and information, to appropriate professional codes, and to assert their individual ambition. We thought, what better way to help with the breaking down of barriers? both in intergenerational and as well as gender, then to forge a connection between current delegates and the next generation of maritime leaders at IMLI. Our thinking behind this program was that the benefits of mentoring for women in the early stages of their career are numerous and particularly critical. As my fellow speakers mentioned, it is important that we start with younger women, with the girls. And we thought that some of the benefits were the following: helping to facilitate decision-making when choosing a career path, strengthening the links and networks between female colleagues in the maritime field. As we know, networks are critical in progressing in one's chosen professional path. And also sometimes responding to the specific problems encountered by women, whether it's representation of professions, as was mentioned earlier, the importance of role modeling, reconciling professional and private time, also known as work-life balance, and how to internalize or overcome stereotypes. The reason that we chose IMLI is due to its long-standing commitment to gender equality. It was the first UN institute to introduce an enrollment quota for women as back as 1988. However, as of next year, Imogen has decided to expand its mentoring program to include other education institutes. And on this point, I'd like to urge all delegates who would like to get involved in training and mentoring students and the future generation to get in touch. And I would like to conclude by making a couple more remarks. So the first regards the interesting results of the survey which was launched today. Congratulations to all involved. It was indeed a laudable effort, and benchmarking and data, creating visibility of women in maritime is critical in order to add nuance to the conversation. I noted several interesting points, but I'm going to focus on one. And that is that cruising stood out as the vertical of choice for women. I think this is something that we already knew anecdotally, because it is often the case that we come across stories of crew members, of captains who are trailblazers in the field. So I think this illustrates what many in the sector already knew. We don't really need to reinvent the wheel in a sense. Centers of excellence exist within the industry. So my takeaway from this is that perhaps we should look within maritime and look at the centers of excellence and the hubs of excellence to share the best practices, for instance, of the cruise industry, and understand what they're doing to attract, train, and retain women, and so help proliferate them across the maritime industry into other verticals. The other point, the last point that I'd like to make, regards the importance of training for all. As my colleague Christine said earlier on, I think that diversity training, I agree, is really critical for everyone. And we often focus on the importance of training women, and I think that that is critical, especially the younger generation. However, I'd like to add that training on diversity, the benefits that diversity brings to the workplace, that it brings to the bottom line, that it brings to making the workplace more meaningful and our work more meaningful is really important. And this is diversity training on gender, age, socioeconomic, and ethnic background. And I think it should be made available to all, men and women. And a really great emphasis should be made on educating all of us on bias and on how we can all work together to create a workplace that is safe and empowering for all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michaela. And I think we can all say that we appreciate the insight you've provided in the very important work that Imogen has been carrying out, and particularly the mentoring program. And I suspect that we have over 500 participants on this symposium alone. And I'm sure you're going to find in this collection of people key mentors that can support the program. And I think that you've highlighted some very important issues, including sharing best practice and also education on bias that are going to be very key as we move forward. And so the idea is that we initially thought that we could ask questions after each segment, but I'm seeing that there's a lot of interest and a lot of questions coming in. So perhaps strategically it might be more appropriate if we run through all the panels and then ask all the questions and then we'll direct them to the various speakers as appropriate. If that's okay with our first panel of speakers, I will move us to our second panel and then we'll take all the questions at the end. Is that okay? Michaela, yes? Yeah.
Just saying bye and thank you.
Pardon?
I was just saying bye and thank you.
Oh no, not goodbye, because we don't mind seeing you, continue to see you. we please feel free to keep on, because we will come back to all the speakers, so the speakers can keep their cameras on. I'll just move to introduce the next panel and then we'll take it from there. Okay, if that's fine. Thank you very much. I will move to the next panel of speakers. And then our second panel is on enhancing visibility for women in the workplace. And this panel will be comprised of Ms. Despina Panayato Theodosio, who is Joint Chief Executive Officer of Tototeo Maritime, a leading global company which provides equipment and services for satellite communications, as well as bridge navigation systems, automated applications, and operational efficiency solutions. And Despina is the current president of Wista International. She is a board member of various organizations such as the Cyprus Shipping Chamber, the Cyprus Employers and Industrialists Federation. And from August 2020, she is the chair of the board of directors of the Electricity Authority of Cyprus. She holds a degree from the National and Kapodistrian University of Athens, the Copenhagen Business School, and the University of Oxford's Said Business School. Despina, if you can give a quick wave, welcome. I'll go on to our next speaker, our first male ally, His Excellency Essam Al-Amari. His Excellency Essam Al-Amari has served as the permanent representative for the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia to the IMO since 2019, supporting all IMO activities. And he was the first male member of the IMO Gender Network. So that's an interesting tidbit for you. And for 13 years, Essam served in the Royal Saudi Naval Forces in Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. He studied a master's degree in naval architecture and marine engineering at École Navale in France, and served as military attaché for the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia in Djibouti, and was later appointed as the representative of coalition forces on the Committee of the United Nations Verification Inspection Mechanism. So Essam is a familiar face at IMO and an ardent supporter of IMO Gender. And if Essam, you could give a wave. Thank you. I'll move on to our final speaker, Ms. Kwealine Lee Hoon, who was appointed the Chief Executive to the Maritime and Port Authority of Singapore in 2019. And she was, prior to that appointment, she was with the Media Corp as the Chief Editor in Channel News Asia. She has more than 18 years of work experience in the public sector, ranging from economic policies to environmental and social matters. And these include the US-Singapore Free Trade Agreement, the UNFCCC, which is the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, and the National Population Secretariat. Lee Hoon is on the board of Movement for the Intellectually Disabled of Singapore, Chamber of Maritime Arbitration, Singapore Maritime Foundation, and the Singapore Maritime Institute. She's also on the board of the Global Center for Maritime Decarbonization and Defense Science and Technology and Singapore Trade Data Exchange Agency. She graduated with an MBA from the IMD Business School in Switzerland and a Master of Economics from the University of Pantheon, Sorbonne, France in 2000. She holds a degree in psychology also from the University of Southern Queensland and has been awarded the Public Administration Medal Silver in 2017. And you will all attest that this is very impressive indeed. So I'd like to welcome Lee Hoon, if you could give a quick wave. So to set up this panel going, I'll invite Despina to take the floor with her remarks. Despina, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, dear Sarah. Secretary General, Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Firstly, I would like to thank and congratulate the International Maritime Organization for its drive to raise the gender agenda within the shipping and maritime industries. It is a great honor to take part in what I think is a tremendous achievement by the IMO and the maritime community to recognize further the need for focused discussions about increased diversity in our industry. We have chosen to celebrate this day by publishing the results of our first IMO WISTA Women in Maritime survey. And this survey is a snapshot of the state of diversity in the maritime sector. We have made a considerable effort to collect data from the member states, from companies from the private sector, and associations in the industry. I first need to thank everyone across the industry and from the member states who took the time to respond to the survey questions and answer honestly and candidly to help us build as detailed a picture as possible about the state of diversity in shipping today. And I want to thank the IMO for our excellent cooperation on this project and the Secretary General who has provided us, the teams working on this from the IMO and from WISTA, steadfast support throughout our endeavor. As president of the Women's International Shipping and Trading Association, I am delighted about the inauguration of the 18th of May as the International Women in Maritime Day. It is satisfying that we now have this day on our calendars to give us an annual focus on the need for a greater gender balance in our industry. It shows the determination from our industry to raise awareness, highlight and identify areas of improvement for gender balance within our sectors. But as we all rightly acknowledge, this day should not be seen as a celebration of women in the industry only. We should be clear about the purpose of the day to allow us to give our industry a gender balance checkup. So what should that mean? It means being honest about our industry. We should ensure we know what is missing in areas of recruitment and training to bring women into the various sectors of our industry. We need to be aware of where there's a disparity in how men are perceived for certain roles compared to women, how the roles are made available and even welcoming to women. Women should have the same confidence, comfort, opportunity, and benefits, and they should have the same barrier-free working environment. This is why a symposium such as this, focusing on training, visibility, and recognition is important to support those goals. So this panel has a focus on visibility. Visibility in the context of this discussion can and should refer to the visibility of women, their capabilities and potential, but also offering women the same level of visibility within their organization as their male counterparts, and also being aware of the differences too. We all know how often women have been passed over for roles, even careers, because of their gender. Women who have achieved positions of authority are women who have had to work harder, fight prejudice, and tick more boxes. And this is true in our industry as well as in any other. Across our industry, which is international and diverse, we have thousands of roles and thousands of different career paths. You only have to look at the WISTA membership to see this. Our membership brings together women from many countries and sectors, and it is quite honestly unique. But while I'm proud of our rapidly growing membership, we know that women in our industry are a small percentage of the total workforce, particularly in some sectors, as we can now see in our survey that was published today. When leaders look to create roles and fill positions, we should ensure that they see the talent pool available. And again, what about women being given the opportunity to talk about their work, talk about their knowledge? No doubt we have all been to conferences and listened to all male panels. And, you know, when we discuss this, some have told me that it is hard to get women onto panels, that it is hard to find the right level of experience in women, get them to say yes to an invitation, get them to participate. I disagree. I recognize that there are fewer women in the industry, but there are women with vast amounts of experience and capability. Our WISTA membership and the women membership, I have to say, is the proof you need. And I'm making a parenthesis. I always like to advocate not only for our WISTA members, but for all women in the industry. And this is an important way of all of us going forward, this collaboration. So going back to participation in conferences, even if the number of experienced female experts was limited, it recognized the need to bring more women into the industry to support their career progression and get them to the same point as their male counterparts, so that conference organizers do not need to give up so quickly on raising their gender parity levels. And here's an idea. I would really like to see soon a male-only panel at a conference talking about what their commitments are to gender parity. Women in our workforce should be given the same opportunities as men. The courses to advance their careers, the university degrees, and the career progression opportunities should be impartial of gender. Training in relation to maritime, but also other types of training, like for leadership skills, can lead to the elimination of barriers. One other aspect I want to address is language choice. And I do not mean whether we opt for English or a local language, but which words we choose when describing roles. Experts have identified that it is not a case of whether an advert for a role uses male pronouns, he instead of she, but that the adjectives to describe a role make a difference. For example, words such as competitive, dominant, or leader are sometimes associated with male stereotypes, while terms such as support, understanding, and interpersonal are related to female stereotypes. By including what are sometimes called gendered words in job advertisements, we could make positions seem less appealing to a particular gender, limiting the applicant pool for these jobs. The choice of words will determine how appealing a role is. How would we, for example, describe the role of a deck cadet? How will we determine whether it is appealing to young women in India, in the Philippines, or China? How do we make the role appealing while still being true to the position these young women would be applying for? My final point is one I am sure we have heard before, we have discussed before, but it needs repeating. Women and men are different, not worse, not better, just different. This difference needs to be seen more clearly, not criticized or dismissed, but made visible and addressed. I'm talking about women working on ships having the ability to have correctly fitting PPE, to have their personal needs recognized while on board. We also need to recognize pregnancy and how family life fits into careers. Our traditional ways are no longer fit for purpose in our modern societies and can quickly penalize women more than men when it comes to family life. Women and men should be given the same opportunities to have a family life while having the opportunity for their careers to flourish. And this is true of women who wish to pursue shipboard careers as much as women in offices ashore. But what I'm asking is also true for men in many aspects. Our maritime workforce, men and women, should be visible and considered vital for our industry success. I am a firm believer also in mentorships and sponsorships as two well-known tools to raise visibility. While we reduce the gender gap and young women come into this industry in various roles, I believe there should be the help they need to overcome hidden barriers. Often young people, men and women, need a sponsor at work to help on their journey, to give them the confidence to speak up and be heard. For women, it helps create a safe space to have discussions that may be difficult elsewhere. Scholarships and courses tailored to the needs of women seeking our careers are also important. That is why with the IMO, we offer programs like the Maritime CEO Leadership Accelerator Program. But also WISTA is working together with other organizations like the Institute of Chartered Shipbrokers and with APEX-SEN to offer courses. And of course, we have many more collaborations on the regional and local level. Such collaborations are ways we can create opportunities for women in our industry. Ladies and gentlemen, again, thank you for this symposium and the decision to create an annual day to celebrate women in maritime, to have a day to discuss and identify what needs to be done to support a barrier-free working environment for women. Thank you for this invite and for the opportunity to offer my thoughts.
Thank you very much, Despina. And I'll go straight to our next speaker, who is Lee Hoon.
Thank you, Azara. First of all, happy International Day for Women in Maritime and greetings from Singapore. Thank you to all those involved in the IMO Secretariat for actually convening this very important symposium. Now, the decision by the IMO Assembly last year to establish 18th May as International Day for Women in Maritime cannot be timelier. You know, just last year in Singapore, we have dedicated 2021 as the year for celebrating SG women. And as a country, we believe in equal opportunities for men and women. And we want to support women's careers and aspirations, including by building a fair, inclusive, and progressive workplace. And as an individual, I have the good fortune to grow up in a society that emphasizes meritocracy and gives equal access and opportunities to boys and girls, men and women. And today, able to rise up the ranks to be CEO of MPA. Now, speaking after Vista President Despina, I must say I cannot agree more with her that a concerted effort to increase the visibility of women in the workplace will help raise awareness, exchange experiences, and most importantly, open up possibilities. So today, I actually want to focus on this key point, which is on open up possibilities. The importance of raising visibility, of opening up possibilities for women in the maritime sector. And for me, I think this can be the most important needle mover in my view. And already, I want to profile here, there are many possibilities of women in the maritime sector. If I look at Singapore, if I could just, do a publicity here, we have women engineers who have joined the ranks in port planning and reclamation works of our next generation transport. We have women seafarers. We saw a 26 increase. I mean, of course, we hope more, but we saw a 26% increase in the number of women in Singapore obtaining their first certificate of competencies between 2017 to 2021 compared to 2012 to 2016. And women seafarers have also joined MPA as well as other maritime companies as a second career and applied their seafaring experience in policy making. And we also have young women, founding marine tech startups. Tech startup plus marine technology. We have Grace Chia, which actually started BX, which actually builds autonomous underwater vehicles used for remote underwater inspection. And of course, there are others in services such as ship financing, maritime law and arbitration, marine insurance, marine tech, and ship operations. Now, there's another whole new world of possibilities, which is women leaders in maritime sector. And we have seen many in this panel here. And indeed, there has been a steady improvement in gender diversity in leadership roles. If you look at the 2021 McKinsey report, it showed that 22% of women are occupying C-suite positions in 2018 compared to 17% in 2015. And also heartening to say and report here that Singapore also reports the highest of women CEOs globally, according to a 2022 Deloitte Global Report on Women in the Boardroom. In Maritime Singapore, we also have many reputable and influential women. And let me just name a few here. We have Caroline Young, who's the first female president of Singapore Shipping Association. We've got Mary Liu, who is the SecGen of Singapore Maritime Unions, Officers Union. So we have both Maritime Union and Maritime Singapore Shipping Association, who are helmed by female leaders. We've got Prof. Lin Lu, who's head of Global Center of Maritime Decarbonization. And we've got Beng Ti, which many knows, who are executive director of the Singapore Maritime Foundation. But of course, challenges for women are different from men, and we shouldn't undermine or underestimate them. There are also needs, that we want to balance career with family, but these considerations should be personal ones. The fact that we are women should not affect the options and possibilities that are available for us who are keen to join the maritime. At the same time, what the sector needs to do is to continue to recognize diversity, do away with discrimination or unfair practices, and promote inclusion. Now, as we all know, and we've been very strong advocate on that, maritime is a global business. Maritime will be more green, will be more digital, will be more automated. So I would say, let's go and tell the world that maritime is also going more inclusive and going more diverse. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Lee Hoon, for those very inspiring and I think very forward-looking thoughts. And I'll wrap up the thoughts on this segment after we hear Essam speak. Essam, you have the floor.
Thank you, Director. First of all, please allow me to congratulate all women around the globe on the International Day for Women in Maritime, which is a success for the IMO. And I would thank the Secretary General, Secretariat, Member States, and all participants in this subject. And I'm glad, and it's a history for me today really to be here and on the first celebrating this. And also I would like to salute all distinguished speakers before me, familiar faces, good friends. Hello, everyone. And in the issue at hand, really, I would maybe take it in a couple different subjects. So around visibility, I think, of course, we agree that women are underrepresented. As previous speakers mentioned, that just 2% of the maritime industry consists of women. The implication of this visibility helps boost recruitment, change working cultures, change public perception of these kinds of jobs women can do. Challenges ahead for women in maritime. Maybe I'm not the best to say that, but as I saw and participated with my colleagues, women empowerment in the maritime sector is subject to factors like geographical location, education levels, social status, and age. For visibility, challenges for promoting women in maritime on this. So I would say promoting female education in the maritime sector. Some before me mentioned that more needs to be done to promote vocational courses for women. We'll equip them with on-the-job training to progress on higher ranking jobs within the sector. There are also needs to be increased participation of women in higher education more broadly, so that women can develop analytical and critical thinking skills required for leadership roles in the maritime sector. I'm sure there is, but I think more investment on it will help. Visibility is an important part of this process. So governments, and here we are representing governments, need to implement requirement for strategies for vocational and higher level courses which highlight women. It could mean using more women in the advertisement of these courses, holding women only enrollment events where the female leaders in the industry can answer questions of prospective applicants. Those enrollment events, Q&A, will be hosted virtually to ensure access for women facing barriers such as financial restrictions or geographical isolation. A speaker at this enrollment event could include prominent female maritime figures, government representatives, industry leaders, and academic personnel. And here I thank also everyone who worked on this survey, which came today on celebration of the state about women in the sector. About other matter, which is the public perception of women in maritime. Women are often discouraged from joining the maritime sector due to public perception of the industry as male-dominant one, which is not true. But this is the fact that we have to work on. It's critical, or it's crucial, that female mentors are made more visible to the general public, not just prospective candidates in the maritime industry. And I'm here. I worked with the IMO Gender Network to a mentoring program with Emily students. I had a female student. She's a future leader in the maritime, and I'm sure having more of that will help. Other matter, which is changing the workplace environment. I think it's a challenge. Women need to be recognized for their important role in maritime by their male colleagues. Fear of how women might be treated within the workforce discourage women from joining the industry and leads to a poor female staff retention, sorry. Some projects maybe that been mentioned and have to be more supported is to prepare the next generation of seafarers. We are working on this matter within Saudi Arabia and its partners in the IMO. And there is another subject that we are talking about, security issues for all seafarers, I think, including women. Safety for women in maritime. Pregnant women are more vulnerable to vector and waterborne diseases. This issue needs highlighting when it comes to training to the next generation of seafarers and when we're preparing them. The need for more date-in study of women in maritime. And this is, I agree with the previous panelists, visibility does not just concern highlighting the positive of women in maritime, but the negative also. The WMU has carried out an important research to highlighting issues such as the risk of women and girls face in connection of illegal fishing, forced labor, sexual abuse, trafficking, and how automation can threaten employment opportunities for women, and what system can be implemented to ensure that women are properly registered in the industry. So you see, there is a lot of matters here on this. But I will go for a case study, which is on the Vision 2030 and Saudi women. This is a Saudi vision, and we are happy to share some lesson learned from that. So women, sure, they play a vital role in the Vision 2030. Women have been identified as significant assist in the workforce. This is their right, of course, but the number have increased in the workforce participation. And again, speaking about, for example, WISTA here, and I'm happy to be with Spina in this panel, an organization which is taking great strides to improve the visibility of women in shipping. Some of their efforts include SHIO leadership program, which I really appreciated, and I'm a fan of it. Research into how COVID uniquely impacted women. That was one of the works that WISTA is doing, as many other works. ISWAN, on the other hand, the International Seafarers Welfare and Assistance Network, had looked into tackling gender-based harassment at the workplace. This is also an issue of visibility, since it concerns highlighting the perception of women within the workplace. Maritime SHIO, and there is a lot of reference and examples, and I will maybe stop here for today. And thank you again, and I'm very glad that I had the chance to participate with such distinguished panelists.
Thank you very much, Essam. And so that brings us, Essam is our last speaker in the second panel. And I think you will all agree with me that this panel has also shared very outstanding insight into the topic at hand, which is on visibility. And I think it's been very refreshing to hear from Despina about the importance of us being honest about the limitations and the disparities, and focus on how we can support the areas of difference and how we can work to address those challenges that come out of the relations. And I think you've also highlighted that there are vast amounts of capable women in the industry, and that more work needs to be done when seeking membership of panels and boards, etc., to be able to locate and identify those key women in the interest of making the public aware that these women are there and they exist and they are working, and highlighting their work. And I think you also made some key points about descriptions used in advertisements and avoiding gendered words in our advertisements. That also would act as a disincentive. I think also recognizing how important it is that we are equal but different. I think that's a very key point. I think a running theme across the interventions that we've heard is on mentorship and sponsorship and in building confidence. And I think those are very key. And I also wish to appreciate Lei Hoon for highlighting the concerted efforts within Singapore that have been made, and the advancements that have been made due to your policies. And I think the policies have been in place for a while, and they are really bearing fruit. And we can see the evidence of the the participation of women within Singapore. And I think you've highlighted some very important points about exchanging and sharing experiences and opening up possibilities. I really like the positive tone that set, and particularly highlighting the emerging areas of the industry that women, given our natural abilities, could really shine. So I think those are very key takeaways as well. And thank you to Essam for highlighting the importance of changing perceptions and of the importance of coaching and mentorship programs, as well as projects that you've mentioned, such as the WISTA project, the Maritime CEO project, and other ones that IMO has also been involved in, that highlight and make women even more visible and highlight the importance of the work that we do, highlight the difficulties, the challenges, as well as solutions. I think those are going to be very key as we move forward. I think also we look forward to hearing from you about the case study that you indicated on Saudi and the Vision 2030. And I think that will be also quite instrumental and probably useful to many of the people who are listening to us here. So we hope to regroup at a future date when we will hear more about this. So with that, I'll move to our final panel, the third panel, before we take the questions and answers. And I think we're doing quite well on time, I'm told, and it will be a very interesting. We've already started getting in quite a few questions, and we have a few hands raised as well. So I'll move straight to the third panel. And the third panel is on recognition. And the speakers we have in this panel are Mrs. Imfon Ekong Yusoro, and Mrs. Ekong Yusoro holds an LLM in Maritime Law from the University College of London, an LLB from the University of Buckingham, and a Bachelor of Laws from the Nigerian Law School, a BSc in Sociology from the University of Calabar, and she's a managing partner of Paul Yusoro & Co., a leading law firm in Nigeria, and she's one of the foremost maritime lawyers in Nigeria. She's the immediate past Secretary General of the Memorandum of Understanding of Port State Control for West and Central African Region, more popularly known as the Abuja MOU. And in actual fact, she was the first, or is the first, female Secretary General of the organization. And she's also a pioneer Director General and Chief Executive Officer of the Nigerian Maritime Administration and Safety Agency, NIMASA. She was the first female CEO of the agency in Nigeria. She holds a number of positions on corporate boards. She's the chairperson of the board of directors of TIB Asset Management Limited, which is an independent, and then she's also an independent non-executive director of the Infrastructure Bank, as well as the First City Monument Bank, and a non-executive director of the Geometric Power Limited, as well as the president of the Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport Nigeria. Very impressive indeed. And so I'd also like you to give us a little wave if you can, Imfon, and with your camera on, if you could. Thank you. And then if I can also go to our next speaker, who is Bud Dar, who is the Executive Vice President, Maritime Policy and Government Affairs of the MSC Group. He's an experienced global maritime leader in areas of policy, government, and related law. And MSC, as you all know, operates in over 155 countries. And he served in the US Navy, Merchant Marine, and Coast Guard, and as well as being an accomplished ocean yacht racer. And his long-standing connection with the sea and ships is both personal and professional. He began his career in submarine nuclear engineering and later obtained his formal undergraduate education at the US Merchant Marine Academy, where he was trained as a deck officer. During his service with the US Coast Guard, he studied law at the George Washington University Law School, and he most recently led the maritime policy efforts of the Cruise Lines International Association, CLIA, prior to joining the MSC Group in 2017. Today, Bud is engaged across MSC's cargo and passenger divisions, developing the company's central government affairs function, based in Geneva, which is the headquarters. and he's involved in MSC's response to development in environmental public policy and regulation and other industry-wide issues such as greenhouse gas emissions, maritime security, safety at sea, and international shipping policy. He serves on the board of the UK Chamber of Shipping, BIMCO, the International Chamber of Shipping, the Liberian Shipowners Council, and Society for Gas as a Marine Fuel. So, Bud, if you could give us a wave. And last, but certainly not least, I'd like to introduce Lieutenant Paulina Vasquez Contreras. Paulina has a law degree from the Technological University of Mexico. She obtained a master's degree in constitutional law and amparo from the Faculty of Law of the National Bar Association, and also her LLM at the IMO's Maritime Law Institute, IMLI. She currently is, as I mentioned, a lieutenant commander in the Naval Justice System, in charge of National Affairs, Department of the Mexican Port Captaincy and Maritime Affairs Unit. She's also the permanent representative in the Latin American Women's Maritime Association Network, which is called Red Mamla, and the Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation Seafarers Excellence Network. She acts as the liaison of the Mexico National Maritime Authority with national and foreign authorities and organizations related to the maritime sector. And in the 2022-2023 biennium, she will be part of the executive committee of Red Mamla as legal committee director. So we welcome our third and final panel. And to start the panel, I would like to invite Mfon. You have the floor.
Thank you very much. Some years back, I never liked to be in the final panel, but as I grow older, I discovered that maybe that is the best place to be. Thank you, IMO, for organizing this and also for spearheading and getting us a day for recognition and appreciation of women. Yes, the question the answer to the question directly is no. Women have not been accorded due recognition at the workplace. If we were, we wouldn't have that as a topic. We may not even have this day. So it's important for us to appreciate the importance of recognition, because it is the recognition, and which is very, very close to visibility. Recognition, it's very key in affecting our perception and also our knowledge worldview on how things are done or how things should be. So when we have a culture of gender diversity or gender inclusion that portrays women as achieving successful partners in the workplace, then our children, the younger ones, will grow up to know that it is normal to have career women who are in top positions and CEOs or board members. That is just to underline the importance of having the recognition, just as it happened, I think, in Iceland, where we had the longest serving female president, about 16 years. And it got to a point that some young boys under 10 were wondering whether there would be opportunity for boys to be president of their country. That was because they grew up to see that women can be a president. What we need to do is to embrace a culture of gender diversity, gender inclusiveness. Some countries already have achieved that. So for them, it would be to sustain it. There are several other countries that are at that stage of having to embrace that culture. Now, the governments have already committed to gender diversity, gender equality by having signed up to SDG 5, and also what you, Sarah, mentioned earlier, the IMO resolution that we call the IMO Gender Resolution. So it is obligatory, not just that women are pleading or begging. It is now obligatory because the government had made a commitment But that commitment has to be translated into reality. They have to demonstrate, government and their agencies have to demonstrate their commitment to gender equity in their governance policies. Governance policies is very critical, and guidelines. An example is the Central Bank of Nigeria. They came up with a policy that all the banks must have not less than 40% of women on their boards. And now we have several, it's opened up the opportunity for women. We have several women on boards of banks. And because of that, diversity in the workplace is a regular report from the HR department in banks, and that continues to improve. So that is one way that government can show their commitment. There should also be a situation where disclosure becomes part of that culture of promoting gender diversity, because disclosure by way of reporting on what each government, what each agency has done, what efforts they have put to achieve a balanced workplace, specifically having women in top positions, will enable them track the number of women against the goal that would have been set in the policy document. In addition to that, it is good practice. Several studies, as mentioned by previous speakers, has shown that it is very important for companies' growth and especially financial performance to have a diversified workplace. So it is good practice in achieving the goal of the policy if government agencies and indeed the private sector are transparent in the nomination process of promotions, etc., so that it will give the female candidates a chance to compete. Because we are not talking about having to give handouts to women that are not competent. But when there's a level playing field and there's transparency, women will prepare themselves and ensure that they pass and qualify for the promotion. It's important for those boards and the companies and government agencies to continue to practice accountability and measure the impact of the accountability, in the sense that they should create a work environment that encourages women to speak up. They should expect tough questions from women and pressure, in fact, pressure from general stakeholders and employees in general to show accountability in their diversity policies. And very importantly, there should be a gender diversity scorecard. We know that certain industries, government agencies, and ministries are sometimes applauded and given awards. Part of evaluation and assessment for that award should be the gender diversity scorecard, where they would have demonstrated by facts that are ascertainable the effectiveness of their gender policies and the practices, where they will have an honest assessment, both internal and external, to track on hiring, how many women were hired, how many women are retained, and how many women are promoted to top positions. And for that to be successful, there has to be a deliberate effort to ensure that we have sufficient women in the talent pipeline. We need to have the pool of qualified women, and that is where the first segment comes in. The training is very essential. And to have women, capable women in the talent pool, then it means that we also have to ensure that sufficient women are brought in for the training. And that means the plan must be detailed enough to ensure that measurable equity is the target, and that from the get-go in training people to be in the pipeline, that we have sufficient pool of women. So that plan would include, what are we doing now? What is the company doing now? What is government doing now? What is the agency doing now to reach the targets of women? Could it be infrastructure like issues relating to childcare, creche, etc., or quotas, or parental leave? All of those have to be taken on board. And then we also need to encourage demand for female hires, whether it is in the public sector or in the private sector. But you see, the IMO has done so well and have done so much to put this issue on the front burner. And because of the credibility of the IMO, where member states kind of look up to the IMO, obey what the IMO says. Just as the IMSAs, initially there was some reticence, but everybody is caught on now. We are looking to the IMO to help us ensure that member states of the IMO embrace this culture of gender diversity and gender inclusiveness. And how can the IMO do that? Similar to what the IMO does in every other aspect of implementation of IMO instruments. That resolution 1147, A1147, our gender resolution, IMO should require governments to submit reports on the status of implementation of that resolution on gender policies and practices. That way, governments, agencies, as they prepare to come to the IMO to report on other aspects of implementation, they will also have a report on the gender issue. IMO can also do something on the training to urge governments to nominate female officials to every IMO trainings and workshop, especially where IMO is sponsoring the attendance and the participation of member states. And again, from the IMO side, and not just for the IMO, in fact, all of us, as we celebrate the next International Day for Women Association, we should insist that there has to be a presentation of gender policy and equality scorecard. But I should not forget to mention what women need to do themselves for us to get to where we want to go to. Women should not limit themselves. Sometimes we limit ourselves. We have to learn to put ourselves forward for top positions. Men do that without even thinking about it, whether they are qualified or not. There are so many qualified women in this system. We should put ourselves forward. We should encourage it. And then finally, women should support women. I'm not going to use the word of the late Madeleine Albright, but there are blessings, uncountable blessings, when women support women and push women, create opportunities for women in the workplace. Thank you very much.
My apologies. I appreciated I said your intervention was very refreshing, and I said I would wrap up at the end of the segment with everyone's contribution. So I'll go straight to Bud. Bud, you have the floor.
Thank you. And my hearing has suffered over the years with all my time in engine rooms, but I didn't think it had gone that bad until just now. So thank you for unmuting. I speak at a lot of events for various things, and rarely have I felt as honored as I do today to be invited for this event. I really thank the IMO for highlighting this issue, for designating this day. I think it's very important, and I'm happy to be a part of it. I'm also happy to bring a little bit of gender diversity to the panels as well, and I hope that you will judge me by the quality of my thoughts and my comments, and not by my gender. And as I say that, I recognize that's probably exactly what goes through the heads of millions of hardworking and professional women on a day-to-day basis. And I think it's helpful to step back and think about that, particularly if I don't walk in your shoes. Maybe I need to give that more thought, how it feels today, and how I really do hope you'll just hear me for who I am. First comment I'd like to make is I very recently was speaking with a senior leader in our industry who is a female. And she said to me, I've been given good opportunities, but I have to say every opportunity that I've been given for a new job has been by some old white guy. And I thought, on one level, I think it's really great that all those people who maybe look and walk and sound like me recognized her talent. But on the other hand, it's still kind of sad that we're so far behind when it comes to development of women overall in this industry, that every door that got open for this particular woman, who she walked through and did extraordinarily well and continues to, had to be done so by a man, just the way the structures have been. So we've got a long ways to go, but I'm very optimistic, and I'm going to give you some examples of why. Let me start by saying, overall, this is an industry where help is not just wanted, help is needed. We need a very strong talent pool and a big talent pool going forward, not only to help us to maintain how we operate the industry today and how we regulate the industry today, but how we're going to do so in the future. And decarbonization offers a really good example of that, where whether it's ashore or at sea, we need people with different skills in order to properly decarbonize, because none of that will happen without the seafarers on the ships and the people supporting them ashore, whether it's in the companies or as policymakers, have the right skill set to evolve with the industry as it evolves. And this is something that has to happen. It's not optional. I mean, we have to evolve the industry in that regard. We need a lot more people. And I'll tell you, in our company, just our cruise division alone, we have to grow our at-sea workforce by about 6,000 seafarers per year in order just to keep up with normal attrition and the expansion of our fleet with new ships as we go. It's an exceptional challenge. And to create a situation where you have limited your access to maritime talent to be of one gender is just asinine. You know, it's just so counterproductive. So we have to look at how those new skills that are required can become new opportunities, both from the employer's viewpoint and the prospective female worker or other workers, and find out what the barriers are to women to not only join, but also to stay in our industry over time, figure out really what they are and tear those barriers down. We really have to do it as a matter of self-interest, as well as fulfilling our obligations to society overall. Whether you judge that by SDGs or something else, I don't think matters. At the end of the day, to be a good corporate citizen, you have to embrace that. And a diverse workforce is a better workforce. And a diverse workforce helps you make better decisions. And those that don't realize that are really living in the dark ages. And I really feel enlightened myself when I get the opportunity to talk to people who really get that and have found how to make their boardrooms better and they found how to make their C-suites function better and result in better decision making. And I've been fortunate enough to work with some of those people over the years. And I think we need to embrace our differences because those differences, whether it's by gender or any other one of the factors that you might name, are really strengths of any body of people, particularly an organization or a company that is going to have to work really hard to continue to have a viable sort of business model going forward. And we really have to also find a way to make our industry interesting, exciting, and attractive for younger generation of people, irrespective of race or gender or any other of the traits you might count, because we need that new lifeline to come in. And people that share the passion of myself and some of these other great speakers today, some of which I've had the honor to work with before and some I haven't, but I feel so good having heard you talk. We need to share that enthusiasm and have people sense that are younger and see this as a profession that is really attractive to them. And then once they get there, mentor them, train them, do what it takes to keep them. So I never know exactly what I'm going to say when I speak at a particular event, and this was no exception, but I thought, you know, who do I know that are senior positions, just as examples of those that are accomplished? And in addition to those speakers you've heard today and that have tremendous accomplishments, I found it incredibly easy to come up with a list too long to name in completion here, but I want to name some names because there have been very successful women, and I think we need to recognize that and embrace that. If you look at the IMO environment, for example, women such as Torrid Stemray and Lindy Johnson, may she rest in peace, Katie Ware, Maite Medina, all of which I'm very familiar with, and they've done great work at the IMO for years and have helped shape what's happened before and what's going to happen in the future. If you look at in shipping companies, Lois Zabraki is a good example. I went to school with her actually at U.S. Merchant Marine Academy. She leads one of the largest tanker companies in the world with a fleet of 93 tankers, International Seaways. She's done incredibly well and continues to impress people worldwide through her actions. If you look at the cruise sector, who's done quite well, Christine Duffy, who's the president of Carnival Cruise Line, Lisa Lutoff-Perlo, who's the CEO of Celebrity Cruises, Jan Swartz, who's the CEO of the Holland America Group. These are really highly accomplished leaders in their field, and gender or not, they earn their spot. They are really doing a great job there and representing all of us very well. I'll mention also someone you may recognize, Captain Kate McHugh, who is one of the captains for Celebrity, one of our competitors. But every time I see her speak, I'm just so impressed at what an eloquent ambassador she is for our industry, for the cruise sector, and for females as well. And she has not only earned her captain's seat, but she's done it with grace, a class, a sense of humor, and she has been recognized for it. I reposted something on social media, which I'll do occasionally on issues I care about. And I just was really impressed and have been at what she has accomplished in a very short period of time. And I was shocked at the backlash, kind of a misogynistic backlash by a small group. I mean, most people were really pleased with what they saw in the article. It was a very favorable article. But these few older men that came back, well, would a man get the same recognition? I wonder what her boss thinks. And I actually know her boss. I know the guy that promoted her, and he couldn't be more proud. And what he said to me was, she is as competent of a captain, if not the most competent that I ever saw come up through the system. So when that happens, I think we need to embrace those people as ambassadors for the industry overall. And the fact that they're a woman can be secondary. It's obvious she's a woman. When it comes to government, look at people like Maya Markovich, who's the executive director of EMSA, or MP Nusgani, who's a former minister for Maritime and Undersecretary for Transport in the UK, who was fabulous in her role when she was there. Look at trade associations. Sabrina Chow is the current president of BIMCO, and I sit on the board of BIMCO with her. She replaced Sedan Castanoglu, who was another woman who is, so the most immediate past president is also a woman, both very accomplished in the shipping world as well. Kelly Craighead, who's the CEO of CLIA, Janet Strode, who runs IPTA, Kirsten Del Valle, who runs the Liberian Shipowners Council. There are women who are doing it, and they're doing it really, really well. And as we look to the future and what we need to accomplish, let's not forget those that are already there and are already serving as great role models for others. The last thing that I'll offer is, as we think about how are we really going to create a long-lasting model where women permanently play the role that they should be playing in the maritime sector, I would say as we work our way towards it, highlight those professionals such as those I've listed. I'm sure you've all got your own list. I mean, I didn't even bother with the lawyers. I'm a lawyer myself, but some of the leading maritime lawyers in the world are women. But think about that, and think about how we can highlight them for their professional competence and accomplishments, and highlight them as frequently as we can. And if you highlight them for that, the rest will come. It's obvious they're not men. It's obvious if you paint it in the right light that they've earned their spot there, and they will serve as a role model for those that want to aspire to be like them. And sooner or later, they'll drive the point home to those that are resistant and living in the dark ages and don't really understand the important role that women already do, but should in greater numbers and greater influence play in our industry. So thank you very much for having the opportunity to speak with this group today. I just couldn't be more pleased than to have this chance, and I look forward to the questions and answers.
Thank you very much, Bud. And as you said, we should highlight women for their competence, and the rest will follow. Very important words. So to wrap up the whole session in this segment, I'd like to invite Paulina, please. Paulina, you have the floor.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of Mrs. Abelia Vistavino, Chair of the Latin America Women's Maritime Association Network, REDMANDA, I truly appreciate the invitation to participate in this symposium organized by the International Maritime Organization. Mrs. Vistavino sends you a cordial greeting and reiterates her commitment as a chair and from Panama as the House of State and General Coordinator of the network to continue promoting the presence of the women in the maritime, port, and logistics sector for the sustainable development. In this sense, I will begin my speech on the last topic of this panel, as a legal committee director and permanent representative in the Mexican National Maritime Authority, related to: is the contribution of women in the maritime sector properly recognized in their workspace? I can assure you that each government, through the maritime authorities, especially the Latin Americans, has been working hard to recognize the contribution of women in the maritime sectors since a few decades ago. It has not been an easy task. Therefore, many women work in many ways to improve the maritime industry, even if, for some reasons, their projects couldn't be accomplished. However, I want to remark that they are an essential part of our antecedents to remind us that a dream can be achieved more significant things. And with the support of the governments and members of the private sectors, the road will be much easier. It is the work of Red Mamla that, in synergy with maritime authorities, generates spaces and opportunities to promote the development of maritime women in Latin America and enhance training, visibility, recognition, and women's empowerment. In 1917, a project became until what is now MAMLA. That is why, in charge of the direction of the chair and general coordinator, we work through the 6 permanent tax committees on legal issues, mentoring, communications, foreign affairs, international cooperation, maritime and social technical affairs. The formalization of the status in September 2019 has allowed Red Mamla to incorporate more than 71 active members who collaborate with the knowledge and skills in the development of the tax from Mamla. Moreover, Red Mamla has generated strategic associations that recognize and make visible the work of the maritime port women. An example of this is our strategic alliances with Copatran, Valencia Port Foundation, Inter-American Commission of Ports, Maritime CNO, Empresa Multimodal SAS Colombia, or the International Maritime University of Panama. Finally, under to the motto, "This is Unite Us," we work for a region under the principle of the sisterhood. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Paulina, and our appreciation for your comments. And I'm sure you'll all agree with me that this final segment was a very fitting close to the whole session. And if I can encourage all our speakers, if they could kindly switch their cameras on, I would be very grateful. And I think this final panel on recognition with the question, which was a very key question, are women's contributions to maritime accorded due recognition in the work environment? And I think the responses that we've received are very thought-provoking. And I particularly want to appreciate Infon's very refreshing thoughts on the need for policy and commitments to promoting gender diversity and setting goals, and the importance of disclosure and reporting on efforts, which will enable tracking and accountability, and encourage companies and authorities to have the kind of work environment that allows progress to be made in these key areas. I think she also had a very interesting thoughts on a gender diversity scorecard and how this could support visibility in this area, as well as important things that you also highlighted. I know people often talk about a talent pool, but you also talked about a talent pipeline, which is key to feeding that pool. So I think that was also very important area that we have to look at. I think also your challenge to IMO, and when I say IMO, it's not just the secretariat, right? We are a composition of our member states. It's all of us. So I look forward to receiving some very interesting submissions relating to some of the very innovative ideas that have come out of this symposium. And then I think your final thing was a very, very key and I think timely reminder. You spoke to the women in the room about the importance of not limiting ourselves and supporting other women as well. I think very important and timely reminders. And also thank you to Bud. I think you've really highlighted the importance of and why it's essential, critical even for the industry to evolve, and that it's counterproductive to limit the industry to one gender, but the importance for companies to ensure that it's in their own interest if they they advance gender equality and promote and enhance the participation of women in the industry. And I think you've really mentioned some great examples of women who have contributed to the industry and continue to contribute to the industry. And as you indicated, that we all know so many more women, and it's amazing. And even on this panel, I think it's really important to highlight that we've been privileged to have representatives we're talking the visibility here. I mean, we've had captains of industry, operations, we've got administrators, diplomats, CEOs, heads of organizations, and women on boards, even beyond maritime. And we've got representatives of government. And then we've got allies who are not women, but proudly support this cause. And I think there's no better show of visibility than we have now. And I also wanted to express my appreciation to Paulina for the initiatives that you highlighted that Mamla has been involved in. And I think Mamla has really been blazing the trail when it comes to initiatives for enhancing the participation of women in this industry, and the importance of these projects and that work and showing what can be done, I think is key. And I think this is an area where we've been discussing at IMO the importance of connecting all the women's associations and groups so that we can all share best practices. We can learn from each other and replicate some of the good things that are happening within industry, within associations, and within the regions. I think there are a lot of very good and important initiatives, and we can learn from each other so that we don't necessarily have to start from scratch in each of our segments of the industry. So thank you very much to the entire panel. So I'll now go to the questions that we've received. We've received quite a few, and luckily the Secretariat has helpfully answered some of the questions, such as questions on how to get involved in the mentorship program, the Imogen mentorship program. That has been responded to in the chat. So all those that are interested can access. I think we're fortunate. We have about 20 minutes or so, a little over 20 minutes that we can dedicate to questions. So we have one question. We've got two raised hands from the audience. And I think the first is Shireen Galal. And then we have Dr. Nassel Mansouri. So first, Shireen, if you could take the floor, just tell us where you're coming from and then just ask your question. If Shireen is not ready yet, I'll just ask Dr. Nasser Mansouri. Yep, Dr. Mansouri, you have the floor. You have the floor, Dr. Nasser Mansouri. Okay, so while oh, there we go, yes. We've lost your audio again. I think you're on mute. Yes, you have the floor.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you to IMO for recognition of this day for women in maritime industry. And congratulations to all women in this industry, which is a beautiful industry, and welcoming the young female who wishes to join this industry. Good presentation by all the speakers. They are great and very good method. Just quickly, I'll let you know, I joined this industry in 1969, and I served on board the ship from cadet chief up to the chief engineer. Then I moved to the shore and working different position in the shore up to the company CEO's advisor. And after this many years, 30 years plus of it in maritime education and training, I have trained many people, many seafarers from Europe, Middle East, Asia, Singapore, and also Malaysia, but mainly in Abu Dhabi or UAE. And while I was there, I trained many UAE nationals, and they are serving on board the ship as a master mariner, chief engineer, and some of them working as a CEO of the company, big company in UAE, and some of them working at the port authority CEOs. But in 2017, we just introduced a program which involves the women to become the seafarer and master mariner, and that was the first time in that country for the as far as the cultural concern. We arranged for them to become the master mariner for coastal vessel, not for the deep sea. And just let your first speaker, Christine, mention that we should mention the women are better than men. But believe it or not, it was 12 students or 12 fellows on this program. And out of these 12 students, 3 of them were female, and 2 of them were much better than the rest of them in theory and practical. And you always, all of your speakers mentioned about training and mentoring. Yes, both of them are very important. Of course, the mentoring, you have to just select the mentor, really means mentor, competent mentor. Otherwise, your program is not going to be successful. But in addition to training and mentoring, I wish to add attitude. To select the seafarer, doesn't matter if it's male or female. They should have a right attitude, because in this industry, life is different, especially if you are working on board the ship. Because the other industry, you work from 9 to 5 and then you're out. But there, you can see the same faces day after day, week after week, and months. And then the people should have the right attitude in that to just have a successful program. Thank you very much and wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nasser Mansouri. I believe that was more of a comment than a question. So thank you so much for that. I'll move to the next question, which is whether there's a question whether the panel thinks that women need specific training, such as self-defense skills, to work in maritime. And perhaps, I think, let me look at the panel. Is anybody willing to take up that question? Self-defense skills in maritime? Yes, Christine,
I don't think it is necessarily a priority, self-defense for maritime. Self-defense is a good asset, whether in maritime for a woman, whether in maritime or in other professions, but there's nothing specific about that in maritime. I don't think so.
Okay. Thank you so much, Christine. Thank you for that contribution. I think that's a fair assessment.
And so if I may just use this opportunity just to launch a message. At CMA-CGM, we are definitely looking for talents. And if the assistants is keen on, wanting to get into a rewarding career, and I can only encourage all these women to speak up and to really proactively, whether to CMA-CGM or to other shipping companies, that you can make proposals and send your offers and send your CVs and resumes. I think all shipping companies are in search of young, talentful women to develop their skills within our organization, and certainly at CMA-CGM. So whether at sea or on the shore, I encourage all women again to speak up and send CVs, because the talent race is a very important thing for us.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Christine. And while I have you on the line, there's a specific question for you, which you might as well take now, if I can just ask. The question is whether, in your experience, it costs more money for companies to invest in the training of its women folk, or in engaging women in the first place? And is it the cost that discourages companies from giving the relevant support?
Well, from the experience I have, it's actually the opposite, because there is no difference in cost, in training costs, whether for female or male talent. But at the end of the day, it often proves from experience that women are so determined in their approach that when they are given the chance to have training, to have access to professional promotion, to have access to a career, they are usually as rewarding for the enterprise, if not more rewarding than men, because their passion and their desire to succeed is often bigger because of what what has been said this afternoon on the difficulty for women to access to successful careers. So this probably sharpens their skills, sharpens their energy, and I would say that it's actually quite the opposite. And if we invest in a woman's career, in the majority of the case, the reward for the company is immense.
Thank you so much, Christine, for those insights. I believe that will be very useful input for those for the questions that were raised. I just want to encourage you to please post your questions in the chat. We don't have a great deal of time, so it would be difficult to support the raised hands function. It's easier if we have the questions and then we can share them with the panel. So if I could kindly request you to share your questions in the chat. Okay, I'm moving to the next question. And the question, I think, Lihun, this is for you. It says, although Singapore is committed to meritocracy, is there special government support through encouraging marine sciences, even though they may not be so sharp at the beginning? I'm not sure if I read this correctly, but I think it's a question related to if there's any special programs to support women in the marine sciences in Singapore.
We do have in universities the maritime studies for graduates. We also have Singapore Maritime Academy, which provides courses, including the COC training as well. I mean, at every stage, NPA is actively, supporting them, and the more important part is actually bringing shipping companies to meet up with the students in terms of providing career opportunities. So I wouldn't say that's specific related to just for women, but for those who are interested in maritime studies, they have the opportunity to study in our university and our polytechnics. And for those who are in the studies, there is conscious effort to actually bring companies there so that jobs opportunities are available for them who have chosen maritime as their field of interest. For Singaporean seafarers, we also actively come up with a few milestone programs where we actually pay out a certain bonus, which we call sail map, at each level of COC that they achieve. And I must say that I'm very encouraged to meet up with female seafarers who are training, female cadets are training with seafarers. They're very resilient, and you can see in them the grit and the resilience that they want to achieve and be successful in their career. So a short answer.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'll move to the next question. There's a question. Sorry. I think this is a comment with a bit of a question at the end about the need to begin training much earlier if we're going to attract and retain a higher percentage of the best and brightest young minds. And this is George Hoyt, who's a Goodwill Maritime Ambassador and is also with Adopter Ship International Global Coordinator. And he also talks about the fact that the training that supports a barrier-free work environment for women in maritime by introducing the maritime community to at a very early age, including elementary, and how we can expand the programs that IMO has in place. And I believe I think that is more a direction to IMO and seeing how we can use these networks that we are building through this symposium and other partnerships to build. So I believe we can move on. And then there's questions about sharing the details of how you can become a member of the WEMAs, etc. And my colleagues from the Technical Cooperation Division are going to share some additional information on that. And then are there any tips you can share with us? This is from Sunny Drakova. And this is asking for any tips on how to attract male allies. So I think I'm going to look at the male allies and see if you can share what are some of the things that can attract male allies to support this effort.
Well, I think you have a pretty small talent pool to draw from on this particular panel. So if that's a barrier to entry to answer, but I'm happy to take a stab at it. It helps if you're talking to someone who's naturally wired to not look at gender as being a barrier and rather, just look at people, their professional merit. But I would say for those that just aren't naturally inclined, I said the single biggest thing that can be done is just proving through accomplishment what you bring to the table, and don't be bashful about speaking up. Don't be bashful about being heard, having an opinion, and contributing as part of a team to finding solutions to hard problems. And I think when you're in the trenches and working side by side over time, those differences on whatever trait you might be thinking of tend to kind of fade away once you've been in the trenches together working on a problem. I'll give a very quick example. The last couple of days, I had the honor to once again lead the ship owners groups at ship owners group at the ILO minimum wage negotiations. And my counterpart from the unions representing the seafarers and I were working side by side towards exactly the same goal in the end. And it turns out, the expectations were about the same. And it was really a great feeling at the end to not think of, oh, you're the union guy and I'm the ship owner guy, the employer. It was just, hey, we got this accomplished together. And I think our relationship will be stronger going forward. And I will note, in both of our closing interventions, we raised a point where that last comment kind of resonated with me, that it's a shame that, until we have a supply chain crisis worldwide as we do, or until we have the Suez Canal shut down for 10 days, which is nowhere near the scope of the magnitude, people don't tend to think about seafarers. They don't think about how all these great consumer goods show up at a low price at their home. They show up because people are doing an amazing job every single day at sea. And we all need to do a better job of getting out there and describing how important and valuable our industry can be, and how incredibly important the people that run it day to day, particularly those on the ships, are. And I think if we do a better job at a younger age of raising that awareness, I think that we maybe have a better chance of the future of filling the workforce needs and achieving the bigger picture, longer term policy goals.
We can't hear you, Azara.
Once again, forgive me. I was appreciating Bud, and I thought that his tips would be very useful. And also, I gave you the floor. Thank you, Despina.
Thank you. I also appreciate Bud's comments a lot, and I appreciate Bud as well because he's one of the allies. But what I wanted to say, in my experience as WISTA president and talking with many of our members from around the world, is that the allies are there. I think we should be open to it and show that we appreciate the allies, and then you see them coming forward more and more. One of the examples I will give is that in some national WISTA associations around the world, we have started accepting male membership. And although in the beginning, some men in the local industries found it strange, many of them were very willing to step up and say, I want to be a member, I'm participating in the events anyway. And then this kind of situation becomes normal. I think that's what we need to do. We need to normalize the situation that there is diversity in shipping. We can use peer pressure at some point, because when you have male allies and they speak in favor of you, it's something, it's not that women cannot speak for themselves, but it's always good to have allies in whatever situation you're in. And another thing, and I will agree with that, if we show our knowledge and what we're capable of doing. We show what diversity can do to a team, to a company, to an economy, to society. And, you know, I'll just give a very simple but very good example. Last week, I was in Portugal. WISTA Portugal was organizing a conference. It was an all-female panel, so not much diversity there, I'm afraid, but it was an all-female panel talking about technology in the industry. The audience was comprised by men and women, and the whole discussion revolved around technology, and not that 4 women on the panel were talking about it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Despina. So I'll move to the next question. And I think these two are very closely related. There's one from Elizabeth Basul, and she highlights that she's been in the yachting industry for about 12 years. And she has not seen many women who are like her in the industry, and that this is usually due to cabin arrangements. And she's asked the question of whether the opportunities to benefit from scholarships, mentorships, and transition courses from IMO programs for commercial seafarers. I think she's asking, and I just wanted to highlight that for IMO, for our programs and sponsorships, it's usually by government nomination. So you'll have to be put forward by your government, and then the IMO considers the nominations, and then if there's we have enough sufficient funding available to fund fellowships, etc., to the World Maritime University, IMLI, and other training institutions, IMSIA, etc. So that's just to highlight that. But I think that there's additional information on other things such as the Women in Maritime Associations and how you can be a part, that is in the chat. I think, and then also I'll move to the next one, as I said, which is also closely related, and how can we help female cadets to get sea time, because we have so many female graduates, but they are not able to get sea time. And this is also a question of the cabin arrangements also that impacts that as well. So also raised by Betty Mutugi. So any takers for that question? How do we help our female cadets to get sea time? Essam?
Thank you, Azara, and thank you for that question. I've been asked this question in a big meeting last February, and I've responded clearly that they have the same spaces and opportunities to get the sea training on board ships. And I'm proud to say that many regional shipping companies working in the region, the Middle East, they were happy to host more females on board for their sea time. So that was an approach, a real discussion that we went through. So I think an approach and knowing the numbers would be a good one. Regarding the berthing and the spaces, there is always a space in a ship. I've never seen a ship without a real space to accommodate them. But what I'm calling here is to follow many companies around the world. And I know there is a lot of companies that are willing to do that. And I see Christine asking for the floor. I hope she will support that. Thank you.
And I'll give the floor to Christine, please.
No, I just wanted to give some examples which will give a little bit of hope. And in CMACGM, we of course we do have female cadets on board our ships. We have today, as we speak, more than 50 female cadets currently at sea on board our ships. And this figure is actually the double of what it was like 4 years ago. So this is the acceleration I was talking about. And about the cabin situation, I can reassure everybody that indeed when we have female cadets, there's no problem about the cabin fleet or whatever, that there are indeed enough cabins on board the ship to accommodate genders correctly. But again, female cadets there is an acceleration of that. Of course, it's easier for big shipping companies like CMACGM or MSC or MERS probably to have a proactive policy about that, because we have many ships. Obviously, we operate many ships, and we have bigger capacity to do so. And actually, what we're trying to do is to foster the female students to join Marine Academy, so that we can have more female cadets, more female officers, and at the end of the day, more female captains and female chief engineers and female top four. Gaining momentum would be extremely efficient, as I said earlier, for the general inspiration on board ships, the general again added value in the maritime world, because there will be more opinions, mixed opinions between men and women's opinion. I think this is really creating riches, definitely.
Thank you very much, Christine and Essam. And Christine, thank you for giving some hope in this situation, because I know that this is a very, very big challenge, and that is faced across the world. And there are a lot of young cadets that are despairing because they are not able to get the necessary time at sea. So I think this gives a lot of hope, and we hope that we can use platforms such as this to encourage companies to take up the challenge to make the conditions available for young cadets to be able to get the necessary time on board. And I think this is not just women. I think even male cadets are struggling to find. Yeah, it's very, very true. So we have a lot of questions. I think we have a few minutes more. But before that, Pauline, I see that you have your hand up, and I think you have some experience in this area. So I'd better give you the floor. Paulina, take the floor, please.
Thank you so much. Well, I think it's more, as part of the authorities, the Maritime Administration and the government make policies and make alliances with the private sector to talk what is the need from the cadets and the seafarers in each country. Each country has different capabilities, different necessities for make solutions, maybe signing MOUs with another member states or regional states, using a different rules or topics for help, not only the females, birds, only the males, because as all the panelists said, this is a problem for all of us. And if we try to do all the best efforts, we make we try to cater to them all the tools that they need on the practice on board. Thank you so much, Mrs. Okay, I give you the panel.
Thank you very much, Paulina. So I realize that we only have a few minutes left, so I'll try and fit in some of the questions. What we will do is we will take the questions that were directed at individuals and see how we can respond back to those who asked the questions if we're not able to get through all of them. There's a question directed to Mrs. Usoro regarding the issue of women pushing themselves, maybe not pushing, but pushing, well, it says pushing themselves forward in the face of opportunities. And is this something that will require formal training, especially government support? Because the tradition in many jurisdictions appear to push women to be more laid back. And should the maritime community design new traditions? So if you could respond briefly.
Yes, indeed. Some cultural issues impede women from putting themselves forward. That is very, very correct. So it is one of the challenges that are being faced head on by the women in Africa and the WISTAs and the Willards associations. We totally appreciate that those cultural impediments. And that is why we're saying, as you put more women in top positions, those women in those leadership positions are the ones that will create the change. And that is why one of the ways that we are trying to tackle the issues. And indeed, we also openly challenge those women that are in top positions. And we are looking forward to seeing them affect changes. And very quickly, because our cadets and young lady will roast me if I don't comment on the problem of lack of sea space. It is worse. It's bad, really, really bad in Africa, considering that we are not ship-owning nations. So our situation is not the same with the other speakers who have sizable flag. So if there is anywhere at all that there could be a global assistance, maybe through international chambers of shipping, which has an observer status with the IMO, to talk to their members so that they could also give some seat time for African cadets, and especially women. So we are talking to our young ladies to change all those unspoken biases so that they will be able to speak up and try to forge an opportunity for themselves. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I have quite a few questions on regulation and different rules, and whether there are rules and laws in particular areas. So I think members of the Secretariat will get back to those people who asked those questions, I think, given in the interest of time, because we'll have to wrap up in the next few minutes. So there are suggestions. There's one to Despina, and it says, since you talked about the power of words, what is your opinion about the male? Oh no, that's been responded to. That's fine. So I'm trying to find one more question before we wrap up. So there's a question for Paulina about your views on opportunities for new generation female experts in maritime authorities and what governments should do to support and encourage female officials. So if you could kindly.
Yes, of course. So everything depends on the policies from each government. But I think right now we have more opportunities to work and demonstrate that we really have all the capabilities and the professional background to support the work in the national level and also as international level. That is the main field that each country try to make their best effort. I don't know, my best example is Latin America. As a representative from Guatemala, we are a representative from 99 different maritime authorities. We are females and we have all the support of our governments, but also we work in different areas. And that is the main field that if we have in this position and we have this arm and the opportunity to speak in another forum, to give us a chance to the other females inside of the Maritime Authority, that is our main work. Given to them the best example for doing it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paulina. I see that Bud has his hand up. Bud, please take the floor.
I do, and there's always a danger when you try to give a list off the top of your head that you'll forget something obvious and important. But when it comes to women that are serving in maritime services or even government services or administrations, I've got to mention Admiral Linda Fagan, who was just confirmed as the U.S. Coast Guard's first ever commandant that was a female. She's a wonderful role model. I had the pleasure to work with her when I was in the Coast Guard and taller and had more hair, and she was a bit earlier on in her career, and she's absolutely earned her spot. She's a wonderful selection for that job. I think she will do an outstanding job as Commandant of the Coast Guard. And I would urge any women that are in the maritime services and looking for inspiration or a role model, look at Linda.
Thank you very much, Bud, for that very good example. So I think we have a lot of questions, as I said, that we couldn't get through to all of them. We'll do our best to try to get back in terms of responses and even engage further with the panelists if there are specific questions to the panelists. We've run out of time at this stage, but I just wanted to express our most heartfelt appreciation to all the members of our panels. They've been outstanding. And I wish we were in an actual room where we could clap and everyone could clap. And I believe that you've shared so much insight into this industry. You've been examples of the visibility that we've been advocating. And we hope that this platform also has given recognition to the outstanding work that you've each done in the different sectors of this industry. And I think that we've got a lot of takeaways from this interaction. I have tried to highlight a number of them as we went along, but I think it's very important to highlight that training should start early, and so that we are ensuring that we are catching people young, and then they have maritime in mind, even as a career. And the training and actual technical skills, coupled with the soft skills and other things such as confidence building and even approach and attitude, are going to be critical in this exercise. How we build confidence through mentoring, through coaching, and training and bias has also been highlighted as a very important part that will support this very important effort. I think also we've highlighted that in terms of visibility, this is absolutely needed to build confidence, to set examples, to inspire, and to change perceptions. And I think that this event and this celebration of this day will go a long way towards doing that. We've highlighted the importance of networks and resources, and the fact that we must do better to find women to serve on boards and to be on panels to highlight and emphasize this visibility. And we've talked about strategic policy, the importance of making policies that will make us accountable, and that we need to have mechanisms for assessing and even showcasing the efforts that are being made in the industry. And I think that we look forward. I suspect we're going to get some very interesting submissions to IMO into our work in the various different aspects of our work soon. And I think we've also highlighted that it's important that we put a big emphasis on recognition for the very important work that several women across this industry do, that will serve as an example and will be the visibility that is required to achieve. So it's kind of like a cycle, and it keeps going, and each part of it is so important in ensuring that we all achieve the objectives. So thank you so much to you and to all those who were following us streaming. We had over 300, I believe over 250 or 300 participants that were following us live as well, in addition to those that were on this Zoom chat, over 500 people as well. And we really appreciate all of you, and we appreciate all the kind comments, the greetings from across the world. I know that celebrations are going on across the world, and hopefully we will get to see on social media and on IMO social media platform all those celebrations that have gone on across the world. And if you could all put, as many people as can, put on your cameras, we see everybody and we can wave each other goodbye. Thank you for this very engaging interaction. Thank you. And thank
Bye-bye.
you to—
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Well done.